So it seems that we've got 7 new Battleforce box sets for Warhammer 40k just revealed. Let's talk through this year's crop of Christmas Battleforces. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about some really quite big and anticipated news, taking a look through Games Workshop's new Christmas Battleforce box sets and what's inside them. These box sets are generally a pretty hotly anticipated release for Warhammer 40k. A selection of the factions in-game get a big box of usually fairly in-demand models that's discounted compared with how Games Workshop sell them normally. And due to being bigger than the Combat Patrol box sets, they often have a few big centerpiece miniatures in here, so it could be an unusual chance to get some miniatures that aren't normally discounted a little cheaper than they'd usually be. For the factions that are receiving one this time, we've got the Space Marines, the Astra Militarum with another Krieg box, the Tau Empire with a battlesuit focused one, the Emperor's Children containing Fulgrim, Chaos Space Marines with a somewhat balanced band led by a Lord Discordant, Leagues of Votann with some Chthonians, and then Tyranids with some monster mash. As per normal, they usually have a focus on miniatures that have releases in the not too distant past. As a result, no real big surprise to see Guard Emperor's Children or Votann here. Perhaps the most obvious choice to me that seemed to get passed up here were the Eldari. I was expecting something Aspect Warrior focused for them, given that they didn't have any launch box set for that range. Maybe they'll have one next year. As per normal, Games Workshop haven't said exactly when they'll be released, but they do have a bit of a pattern with these ones. The previous ones generally go on sale around about mid-November time. I believe the last ones went on pre-order the 16th of November, so they had their full release in stores on the 30th. And while we don't know the price tags for these yet, I feel like it's quite likely to be $240 or £150, similar to the Real Space Raiders Battleforce box set. That would have these ones land in the same sort of discount region as Games Workshop's Combat Patrols and things, and most of them seem to have fairly equivalent kits in them in terms of how much money you get in the box. As I mentioned in previous videos, these ones will be featuring for the Auspex Tactics November channel giveaway, where 10 channel viewers will either get a Crux Terminatus box set or a Christmas Battleforce box set of your choice, you choose which. And as per normal, there's the 2 ways to enter, either free via social media or via supporting the channel on Patreon for any amount. I'll talk through details of that a bit more at the end of the video. When they do release, hopefully you'll be able to get them a little cheaper via the channel's affiliate discount retailers, linked down in the video description, usually between 10 and 20% off Games Workshop prices, though I would bear in mind that some of the more popular ones will sell out quite quickly. A big thank you to any people using those when they pick up miniatures though, it does help to support the channel. Let's get into it properly though, and we'll start off with the Space Marines. They're pretty common to see in a Christmas Battleforce box set given the wide appeal of their army, and they seem to have a pretty solid Battleforce box set this year with an Iron Halo Strike Force. This one's got some company heroes with the attached captain, a Primaris Lieutenant, 5 Stern Guard Veterans and 5 Hellblasters, a Redemptor Dreadnought and a Ballistus Dreadnought, and then a new sprue of Space Marine head swap upgrades which Games Workshop revealed today. Going through the miniatures, the company heroes are the Primaris style command squad featuring a captain in the box as well. The company heroes are often quite good leading named characters for the Space Marines, such as Marnius Calgar, usable enough in-game, though maybe not usually what you'd want to necessarily have a standard captain lead, as their free stratagems might be better placed elsewhere. There's a Primaris Lieutenant pictured in the box art. It doesn't look like they actually mentioned him in the free text of the article, though he is clearly there. It looks like he's the multi-build one with a choice of different weapon options, including a Power Fist, and it's been a fairly staple HQ leader in-game recently. Pretty nice to give lethal hits to things like Hellblasters or Blade Guard. The Redemptor Dreadnought's the Primaris mainline Dreadnought, quite a well-liked and well-received miniature with a big plasma cannon or heavy onslaught Gatling cannon. Games Workshop gave them a points drop recently, so a pretty solid in-game once more. The big macro plasma getting on very well with Oath of Moment with +1 to wounds. Then we've got the Ballistus Dreadnought, fire support from the Indomitus box set, heavy-hitting anti-tank fire, and compared with other Space Marine gun platforms, maybe a little bit less damage but a bit more durability per point with that sturdy 2+ save. They're a touch less standout than they used to be recently due to a points nerf up to 150. We've got 5 Hellblasters, which generally tend to be pretty popular models. Fun Space Marines with plasma guns, so nice general purpose damage. There's 5 of them in a squad here, so half of a squad that you might expect to find sold normally. Again, they'll also enjoy boosted Oath of Moment. And then finally for main miniatures we have the Stern Guard Veterans, recent release kits out of 9th edition, updated in a similar sort of style to the Blade Guard. They're pretty strong in game and often come with an attached character. They get 4 rerolls to hit and wound against the Oath of Moment target, which is excellent for their devastating wound shooting, though absolutely amazing in close combat as well with their captain attached. Then finally we have a small new reveal of the day. Games Workshop has released a set of Space Marine heads, it would seem, so a few different ways that you could personalise the different Marines in the box set, including a few helms of older armour marks, such as some Mark 8 ones, a few with some fun Sergeant or Leader helmet crest, and a whole bunch of bear heads to add a bit of personality to squad leaders, I guess. Adding that up for the points in the box set, it looks like you get around about 800 or so. That's to be around about 3.4 points per dollar, and I believe that makes them the single most points intensive out of these Christmas Battleforce box sets. Not quite as good as some offerings those that we've had in the past, where we've had over 1,000 points, 1,000 Suns or Custodians previously. It still seems solid enough though, and beats out most Space Marine combat patrols for that. Then for theoretical discount, going by those estimated prices of £150 or $240, it's looking like you get a fair amount off the model cost here. I've estimated the Space Marines head kit the same as, say, the Black Templar upgrade sprue. If you want that one at full price, then it looks like there's around $400 or £240 here. So in theory then, that would equal around 38% discount, which again looks like it's the best out of the battle forces this year in terms of money saved, presuming that you did want the heads. If you just discounted them entirely, it's more like 32% and more in line with the rest. Overall, at first impressions, that one feels generally solid enough. Most of the miniatures in here are fairly well received ones amongst the Primaris range. People enjoy the Dreadnoughts and the Hellblasters, and the Sternguard and Comedy Heroes were well received miniatures from 10th. In game, literally everything is usable enough in game right now. There's literally no unit here that I wouldn't be tempted to include in an army, though at the same time most of them are solid options as opposed to absolute auto-include staples. Overall though, I'm expecting this one to be a popular box based on its value feeling. There's a good amount of points, a pretty reasonable amount of plastic I think for Space Marines. The discount is okay, and it's got the extra draw of having those fun head upgrades. I'm going to guess that this one's going to be one of the most popular given the broad appeal of Space Marines and looking like an overall fairly tempting one. Before we move on, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Baron of Dice. They're a high quality dice maker based in the USA. They made some fancy merch dice for the channel a while back and asked to sponsor some videos at the same time. Their main offering is to have a whole bunch of dice that could fit in with various wargaming factions out there, plenty of them appropriate enough for the armies of Warhammer 40k, often being fairly popular as a bit of a luxury pick to have dice to match your army. They've got various different designs of these. Their typical offering is to have 25 dice for around about £29 or $35. They've got multiple options that could be of interest to most Warhammer armies out there. These ones could be nice enough for your servants of Slaanesh, I guess, and plenty that could work well for different legions or chapters. If you do pick up anything through them, there's a 5% discount code in Auspex to save a little bit of money. And as mentioned, they do have some fancy dice with the channel logo on if that's of any interest. The black ones were really quite popular when they came out. In any case, thanks to them for sponsoring the video. You can take a look over their range linked down in the video description if you'd like to. Moving on to the next box, and next up we have the Tyranids Crusher Stampede. This one's Monster Mash Tyranids with 5 main monsters, plus the Neuro Tyrant has his 2 Neuralized supporting acts, I guess. In this one you get the Horrors of the Hive box set, so that's the Neuro Tyrant and the Screamer Killer, then a Maleceptor that you can build as a Toxicrin, a Turvigon that you can build as a Tyrannifex, and a Haruspex that you can build as an Exocrine, so quite a lot of dual build kits here, and several of them could be interesting enough to get in a discount box set, given that most of them are online only. Going through these, the Haruspex and Exocrine have both been pretty great in 10th, easy melee balance from the Haruspex, but the Exocrines maybe being the true standout with just general purpose anti-elite shooting. Being sold online means that discount retailers don't usually give as good discounts for these, so getting them in a discount box set could be a pretty interesting option. Then there's the Turvigon or Tyrannifex. The Turvigon hasn't been a standout as it's sometimes been in the past, even with a points cut recently. The Tyrannifex has been a bit of a staple with its Rupture Cannon, having some of the scariest anti-tank firepower, even if the big hit or miss nature does mean it's a bit of a casino cannon. The Maleceptor has been a solid bug to have in the front ranks, some general purpose firepower, a tiny bit of melee threat, and a good debuff rule with an invulnerable save to make it harder to kill than most. You can also build it as a Toxicrin, though Games Workshop hasn't been so kind to the rules of that one. And then we've got the Horrors of the Hive box set, initially coming out in the Leviathan box. We've got the Screamer Killer, the melee variant Carnifex with 4 claws, a bit on the costly side for what it does currently, but quite a fun model. And then the Sinister Hovering Neuro Tyrant that was people's favourite model from the Leviathan box when I did polls on that. Really quite a strong model in game at the moment, a cheap boost to the Shadow in the Warp. And then beyond that is a fairly efficient monster that could either just guard the home field and provide some synapse to things, or heading up a squad of Zoanthropes for an anti-tank battery. Adding together 4 points in the box, it comes to around about 730 points worth of monsters, though it does depend a bit on build choices, as several of the monsters could vary quite a bit depending on which assembly option that you go for. It could be up to 750 points if you maxed it out, which really wouldn't be an unreasonable choice. All the more expensive versions, I'd say, are broadly the stronger ones. Overall, it seems enough to be a helpful discount deal, around about 3 points per dollar, which is reasonable enough for a chunk of 40k. I wouldn't say crazy standout for a combat patrol or discount set, but useful enough. For the discount in the box set, it seems like you get around about 33% off, so there's about $360 or £220 in the box set. I must admit some of the pricing on these ones is a little bit on the weird side, Auspex and Exocrine and Maleceptor and Toxocrine both being more expensive than the cheaper Tervigon or Tyrannifex, despite that one being quite a big chunky model. Either way, it's certainly enough discount to be useful if you wanted these specific monsters. Models wise, I feel like there's no major criticisms of the miniatures from me. Aside from the recent Horrors of the Hive one, they are slightly older models as they go, but having 3 of them be dual build box sets might up the broad appeal of this box set to more collectors, as there might be just at least some chance that you don't have either one build or the other of them. In game I mentioned them before, but all of the models can be strong choices for the Tyranids right now, besides perhaps the Screamer Killer. Neurotyrants, Exocrines, maybe Haraspexes in Subterranean Assault, Tyrannifexes with Rupture Cannons for good fire support, and Maleceptors for Synapse and frontline brawling, and most of them are pretty useful regardless of detachment. Overall seems like it could be an appealing enough box set given that Tyranids are popular right now. The points I'd say is alright, they're not crazy standard, same with the discount. Probably the biggest criticism that this one's going to get is that it's a battle force with just 5 main models in it. Even if they're fairly big and chunky ones, people aren't going to be enormously impressed by that. I feel like a fair few Tyranid players have probably already got a Neurotyrant as well, given its appearance in the Leviathan box set. It's not really a model that you'd want 2 of in an army quite so often, but I guess you could resell it if you wanted to. Overall seems like it's enough to be a useful building block in an army. Next up, we've got a Demon Primarch entering the fray with the Emperor's Children Blissbound Warband. This one seemed like quite a likely one to get a release. In the past they've done Christmas Battleforce box sets with all the other Demon Primarchs, so given the release of Fulgrim it seemed like quite a good excuse to do one there. Fulgrim of course absolutely dominates the box set, and then he's backed up by some Emperor's Children Elites, 2 sets of the 3 Flawless Blades, and 1 set of 6 Noise Marines. Fulgrim's rather twisted and depraved model made a fun entrance into Warhammer 40k earlier in 2025, generally pretty well received. He has a few fun head swaps and some disturbing pale black flesh for an icon of Slaanesh on his front. In-game Games Workshop haven't really got him to the point where he's particularly strong yet, despite a few points cuts. I have a feeling that while he's generally unplayed at events, they'll probably keep on buffing him though. He can be interesting with a big melee threat that moves very fast and has fights first, but for a big points cost, he maybe just doesn't really feel quite tough enough if the enemy just focuses him down. Next up, we've got the iconic elites of Slaanesh with the Noise Marines, packing their Sonic Blasters and Blastmasters. They've certainly been a competitive staple, are likely to be pretty relevant in most Emperor's Children lists due to being the only real shooting that the faction has. Then finally we've got 2 sets of the 3 Flawless Blades, Emperor's Children not possessed, but more demonically enhanced with mutations. They're fun and twisted, rather degenerate Slaaneshi Blade Masters. Their data sheet having some fun factor, wounding everything on a 3+ if they invoke their patrons, but if they don't kill anything, then Slaanesh is displeased and slays one of them. They've been a bit underwhelming initially, though after getting quite a big melee buff in the last balance update, it feels like they're a bit more in contention with the other elites once more. For points in the box set, it looks like it's around about 705 points in the box, Fulgrim making up about half of that, around about 2.9 points per dollar. Is kind of similar to the Tyranids, not standout low but maybe not standout high for a discount box set like this. For theoretical discount, it's around about $360 or £220 in the kit, and again is roughly a 33% discount versus buying separately, with again Fulgrim making up around about half the value. If you don't want Fulgrim, then this obviously isn't really going to be the box set for you. It seems that in general they might have aimed these Christmas Battleforce box sets just to be a little bit more generous than the Combat Patrols, maybe having around about 5% more discount or so, though that is assuming that they're going by the pricing of the Real Space Raiders box. Overall, putting that together, the models were generally pretty well received, the Emperor's Children being a well-liked range when they released, perhaps the Flawless Blades just being a little bit more received mid compared with some of the rest though. In-game, Flawless Blades and Fulgrim have been a bit underwhelming recently, though the Noise Marines have been solidly top tier. After the recent balance changes, I still say that Fulgrim's that way, though the Flawless Blades are more usable. In the future though, I'd be kind of surprised if Fulgrim doesn't get fairly strong at some stage. Then for value feeling, it feels sort of middling. Okay points and a reasonable discount, there's not really a huge amount of plastic here. The Flawless Blade's not really helping with that, with Games Workshop's 3 model elite kit kind of being low on that metric usually. It maybe feels a bit unhelpful to have such a heavy focus on Flawless Blades in the box set as well, particularly as the Emperor's Children Combat Patrol box set has 2 sets of 3 of them. It's also not going to be quite so useful to Emperor's Children collectors who started this year, I suspect. I'd guess the majority of those will probably have Fulgrim already at this point, so it might be a box set more aimed to newer players to the faction as opposed to established ones. Next up, we've got the Leagues of Votann Chthonian prospect. The Space Dwarves had their second release follow-up wave this year, and it does look like there's a couple of the kits in this box. The force is led by a Brockhir Iron Master. There's 2 sets of Chthonian Berserks, 2 Chthonian Earthshakers, the Mole artillery pieces, a set of the Brockhir Thunderkin, and then the Hernkin Caprica's scout vehicle. Going through those, the Brockier Iron Master is the leader engineer sort of figure. It's pretty good to run alongside Thunderkin and perhaps a Hecaton Land Fortress or both, and does have some surprising amount of threat himself between those grav weapons that he has. He might be strongest in the Bramfast Oathband with the targeting enhancement to give you extra damage on the Thunderkin. Chthonian Berserks are the sort of muscled, bionically enhanced, more than plasma axe wielding space dwarves who were voted as one of people's least favourite Votann models when I did a poll on the subject, though not really by all that much. I guess they do feel a bit different to the rest of the faction, not being quite so heavy on the spacesuit stuff. They're pretty solidly scary melee units in game though, ideally jumping out of a transport to hit things very hard, probably with concussion mauls and gauntlets. The Chthonian Earthshakers are a new kit for 10th edition, burrowing mole grenades into the enemy lines, and quite a nice example of an artillery style unit that's actually fairly playable in game for the points cost, kind of a rarity in 40k. People usually go for the 1 damage tremor shells. The Brockier Thunderkin are the extra frame units with conversion beamers or grav cannons. They can bring some very heavy fire support in multiple different forms. They're one of the star units of the codex really. And then we've got the new Capricus Carrier or Defender, basically sort of like a big version of the Hernkin Trikes. This hover quad vehicle has more commonly been used as a carrier variant to split a squad of Hernkin and then provide you some extra nuisance units to rush up the board after them. The railgun mounting Defender version is a bit lesser played. For points in the box set, this one is quite a lot lower than the previous 3, around 540 points in the box set, so 2.3 points per dollar. Not really all that stand out and not crazily ahead of their combat patrol. It does feel on the low side as battle forces go. For discount though, it's pretty much in line for the rest, around $370 or £227 post price rises, so if the box set goes by those estimated prices, it should be around 34% off, so compares slightly favourably to things like combat patrol boxes. Overall for models, the Votann still don't exactly have an enormous range. This is a good selection of their kits, and quite nice to see a couple of the new units here, which I'm sure will add to the appeal for the box set, given that not so many people have those yet. As mentioned, the Cthonian aesthetic is maybe a little bit less universally loved than some of the rest, though obviously plenty of people like them, and having 10 in the box set might just be a bit more questionable if you've already got a good number of them, and might be a little bit less helpful to more established Votann collectors. In game, pretty much the entire Leagues of Votann roster is fairly well balanced and at least usable currently. After this, I'd say most of that falls into the category. Perhaps the absolute top tier thing has been the Brockier Thunderkin and the Capricus Carrier if you pair it with some Jaegers. For value, I feel like it's alright by discount, and the amount of plastic seems acceptable perhaps. Maybe still a touch on the low side there. It does have very low points compared with some of the rest though, which I feel won't help it feel like a particularly great deal to people. Overall though, it doesn't really seem too bad as a starter set or a reinforcement set for a Votann army. It might make sense to pair it with some other things though. I feel like Jaegers might be wanted to go with the Carrier, and Hecaton Land Fortress would work well with the Berserks and potentially the Iron Master. Next up we've got the Tau, and they're back for a surprisingly low content battlesuit box set. In this one we've got Commander Farsight, 3 Crisis suits, 1 broadside battlesuit and a Riptide, and between them I believe those kits come with 10 drones total. Obviously Games Workshop will put 16 models on the front of the box set due to that. Tau had maybe a not too dissimilar box set last time round, going heavy on the battlesuits, though I feel like even compared with that one, this one is a bit more even more standout for just not feeling like a lot of stuff here. There's only 4 kits in the box set and that's less than any of the others. The models are generally nice ones and pretty in demand for Tau players. Commander Farsight I think is a really lovely sculpt, going for a sort of Japanese samurai style aesthetic. He's been a bit middling recently, though went down in points a good amount. He gives you some free stratagems and has a little bit of Tau melee, which is fun. The Riptide has often been one of the staple heavy lifters for the Tau, quite a fun big supersuit with a shield generator. They recently got better in game with +2 strength to the Ion Accelerator, and they were already pretty solid before that, so now feel like a particularly standout unit within the Tau Codex relative to others. Then we've got the Crisis suits, basically some of the most iconic Tau models that they have. They're generally going to be wanted in large numbers by Tau collectors, so having at least some of them doesn't seem like the worst here. They're now fielded in their 3 different main variants, 2 of which went down in cost recently, and they're often a central unit for many detachments, having the best use out of enhancements and characters. Then finally we've got the broadside battlesuit, a fire support one either armed with a heavy rail rifle or a high yield missile pod. Again also went down in cost recently to 80 points per model if fielded individually. Pretty efficient and scary fire support, the main trade-off being a little bit slower versus Riptides or tanks. Overall though, with just the 4 units here, and Tau being particularly expensive to collect in Warhammer 40k these days, the points in this one is just very low indeed, less than 500 points, which previously was often a target for combat patrols to try and get to, so not great to see that in a big expensive discount Battleforce box set. Depending on the choices for assembly of the crisis suits and how you feel the broadside in terms of numbers, it might be up to 500 points. It does mean it's only around 2 points per dollar, which is pretty bad for a big discount box set as a chunk of an army, and this metric wasn't exactly helped by the points cuts that Games Workshop just gave to most of these, as opposed to buffing their rules at least besides the Riptide. For the discount in the box set, a lot of these kits are really quite expensive to get. It does mean that if you add them all together, it's $345 or £211 in the box set, so that equals around about a 30% discount here. Maybe a little bit closer to combat patrols than some of the other Battleforce box sets, but probably not really significantly to be a factor in itself to turn you off this one. It's still a useful amount of discount, and it's more than models overall. It does feel like some of these models do feel expensive for what they were though. The broadside battlesuit in particular got several votes for feeling like one of the worst steel kits in Warhammer 40k when I made a video on that at the weekend. Overall, I feel like models wise, the battlesuits themselves are pretty well in demand for Tau players. I quite like all the kits, and they all are very solidly usable models in game at the moment. Maybe Farsight and the crisis suits being a bit more detachment dependent. Broadsides are just really quite efficient full stop now after points cuts, and the Riptiders stand out strong with the Ion Accelerator buff. This one does feel just a little bit suspicious on Games Workshop's part, as literally every single one of these models got a buff in the last balance update. I'm not sure whether that was some sort of intentional thing to sell people on a few more Tau box sets. Admittedly, the other 6 box sets don't really have the same sort of trend. You had a few things buffed, but nothing across the board like this. Most of the changes seemed at least reasonable enough. It maybe only really felt like the Riptide was a bit on the odd side to get a direct buff while being a fairly strong model already. It feels like the Ion Accelerator change was a good one, but I'm kind of surprised it didn't go up in points like say 5 or 10 points for that. Overall though, I feel like this one's going to be perceived as a pretty bad value box set. You really don't get very many points in this one. The discount might be good on buying them separately, but just having the one big suit and then 5 medium sized ones does feel kind of weak on the plastic side of things. Feels like this one's more of a testimony to how expensive Tau are to collect these days. It just feels like for the overall health of the army, these models should be scarier on the tabletop and cost more points to reflect that. Having a special character in the box set also might diminish the appeal a little bit. If you've already got Farsight, this one's not going to be so directly helpful. Moving on though, and we've got Chaos Space Marines. They've got a Hellforged Warband, which looks like it's got a bit of a nod to demon engines and things, though not too much. The Warband's led by a Lord Discordant on Hellstalker. They've included the online-only Warpforged set in this one, with Obliterators and a Venom Crawler. There's 5 Havocs, 10 Chaos Space Marines, and a Chaos Rhino. Going through those, and the Lord Discordant I think is a particularly fun model, riding a creepy Hellstalker, having a few interesting weapon options, and recently having some buffs in game to the point where he's really quite a strong and dangerous melee model. That was nice to see, as he's been notably bad for most of the rest of 10th. Then we've got the Warpforged box set. Kind of nice enough to see this one in here, I think, given it's one of the better discount deals for Chaos Space Marines right now. You do get quite a lot of points on the table from this one. In this one you get 2 Monopose Obliterators and a Venom Crawler, all quite nice models, though it might have been nice to see a few more options for them. The Obliterators are solid fire support, maybe a little bit more mid-tier than stand out for most people, though notably they were in the list that won the London Grand Tournament recently. The Venom Crawler has been a bit niche, though went down in points a touch recently. It's still probably going to be more tempting for the Soulforged War Pack versus elsewhere though. Chaos Legionaries are the staple troops for the faction. It's really a terrible thing to have a few more of them. They do have quite a lot of loadout options, though it looks like this kit probably doesn't contain the kill team upgrades for the chain cannon and things. They're quite strong in game currently, particularly if they're backing up a Chaos Lord with some rerolls. The Chaos Rhino's a dependable older kit, getting scary melee things from A to B, nice for say Chaos Marines or Chosen to be jumping and charging out of. And then finally we have the Havocs, getting a choice of different heavy weapons that you can't get for one sort in the box set. Quite fun models I think. They are a bit underwhelming in game currently though, not really having particularly better firepower than the tanks, while being far more fragile. Putting it together though, and you do get quite a lot of points in this box set relative to the rest. There's 800 points here, so around 3.4 points per dollar, kind of on a par with the Space Marines pretty much. Certainly feels like the inclusion of the Warpforged for around about 270 points there was quite a helpful one there. For theoretical savings, again it looks like it's more or less on par with the rest, about $350 in the box set or £217, so that would equal around about 32% savings versus buying all of these separately. Overall, between all this, the miniature contents feels like it's pretty nice and well received models. There are a few criticisms sprinkled in though. The Obliterators and Venom Crawler are monoposer, bear in mind. The Legionaries don't have the upgrade kit, and the Rhino is an older miniature, and any of those might have a little bit of factor for one person or another. In-game, the vast majority of the units are really quite solid in-game. I'd probably only say the Havoc are slightly standout underpowered. Perhaps the absolute pick of the strongest units in the box might be the Lord Discordant and the Rhino to deliver melee chaos things, and perhaps the Legionaries as well if you have a 5-man squad with a Lord. Overall it feels pretty strong in terms of value though. A good amount of points in the box set, a reasonable amount of plastic with a few biggish miniatures plus a good amount of infantry, and the discount on it seems okay, fairly in line with Games Workshop standards. Certainly seems like a tempting one if you do want to add these miniatures in. Then finally we've got the Astra Militarum box set, and it was maybe a bit of a surprise seeing a Krieg Siege Platoon for this one. I guess they did have their Krieg miniatures come out recently, which upped the chance I guess, but it just seems a little bit less likely when they released the Krieg Combat Patrol box. So the Astra Militarum have had not one but 3 different Krieg discount box sets come out between their launch box, the Combat Patrol and this. Like the other box sets, it also has 4 out of the 7 mainline Krieg kits here. This time we've got a Krieg command squad to lead the box, 2 of the new artillery teams, 2 Krieg infantry squads, and then 1 squad of combat engineers. Going through those, the Krieg command squad is really quite a fun one, led by a Lord Commissar to stop the Kriegsmen marshalling themselves quite too easily, plus some other fun details like a banner bearer, Vox operator, a Commissar aspirant, and some servo scribes. In-game, they generally haven't been the command squad of choice recently, more people going for the Cadian command squad, offering a bit more, and the Cadian shock troops having their own draw, but they're certainly not unusable. Then we've got 2 sets of Death Corps Krieg infantry. Garden an army where you can field absolutely tons of bodies on the line. Having a couple of sets of these isn't the worst in the world, though it seems they're probably without the kill team upgrade kits that they originally had. They're perhaps more incentivized to field them in smaller squads now as opposed to bigger ones, now that Games Workshop charges them a premium to do so. Then we've got the artillery team. These can be assembled with one of 4 different options, and they are fairly easy to swap out between them. Generally the one to go for is the Great Big Siege Cannon, providing some fairly punchy indirect fire support at strength 12 and damage 3. They're paying an expected premium for being able to fire out of line of sight. They were a particularly well received model and people really enjoyed these little diorama with the sandbags that they've got going here. Then finally we've got a team of combat engineers, Kriegsmen up-armoured with a bit of carapace armour, one having a bomb propelled on corkscrews and being able to throw some free grenades around. In-game maybe a useful alternative to the Kashan jungle fighters at 60 points for a scout unit, not doing quite as much for objectives, but having more of a sting in the tail with that potential for mortal wounds. Overall though, with guard infantry being quite so expensive for points on the table, it does make this Battleforce box set the lowest in terms of points for the money, just 450 points in game, so 1.9 points per dollar, which is fairly standout bad for a big discount Battleforce box set like this. I guess following the lead of their Combat Patrol box set, it's almost always going to be the case for guard sets that don't have any vehicles in though, unfortunately. Feels like maybe having a bit of balance with maybe just adding 1 Russ in there really wouldn't have been the worst to keep the box set a little bit more in line with here, even if you had to swap out a few of the infantry or 1 artillery team perhaps. For theoretical discount, it does look like it's probably the lowest out of these Christmas Battleforce box sets, presuming that they're all at the same price. It seems there's $332 of stuff in the box set, or around £205. That's around about a 28% discount. Not exactly crazy lower than the rest, but a little bit. It's still more and less in line with Games Workshop's range of Combat Patrol box sets for 10th edition. Overall, putting that all together, I feel like it could be one of the box sets that's seen as not necessarily the best deal in the world, but still might have a fair bit of appeal to Krieg collectors. The miniatures were all very well received from the recent Krieg refresh. People really liked the command squad and artillery teams, and the rest is useful. In terms of gameplay, I'd rate the vast majority of this sort of middling-ish for guard at the moment. All of it usable, but maybe not super standout. Literally all of the options having solid competitors for their battlefield role. For the value feeling though, it's got a low amount of points on the board. The discount is still useful, but a bit lower than normal. I say for the amount of plastic, it's maybe a little bit on the mid side. Not exactly crazy lower than some of the other offerings though. There are 30 odd infantry miniatures, even if they're somewhat small, and the artillery teams are fairly chunky with their big mini dioramas. It does feel a bit weird to have both this and the Combat Patrol Krieg box come out so close to each other though, and more so seeing as the Death Corps got a launch box set. It maybe feels a bit unfortunate that the Combat Patrol also has a command squad in it as well, and that could lessen the appeal for some if they've got a command squad either there or from the previous Krieg release. I still guess that this one will be at least somewhat popular given the desire for the Krieg models, even if it won't get you all that many points towards a completed guard army. In any case though, let me know your thoughts as to the 40k Christmas Battleforce box sets. Which ones would you rate as the best or worst, and which ones would you be tempted by, if any of them? I'll look forward to hearing your takes down in the comments below. Hopefully I'll follow this up with a video later in the week, talking through them with a few insights from polls from you guys. Finally, for main things to talk about in this one, I'll just mention the channel's November Battleforce giveaway, which as mentioned earlier will have 10 winners, and they can either choose the upcoming Space Marine Crux Terminatus box set, or any one of these Christmas battle forces talked through in this video. Hopefully it should be a good way to get people started on some new 40k projects or expand some existing armies. As per usual with the channel giveaways, there's 2 equal ways to enter for this one, links down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any paid amount each month. That gets you automatic entry and is the main thing that helps to support content creation on my channel. A big thank you to anyone helping out there. Otherwise, you can support Auspex Tactics via social media and enter completely for free. To do that, you do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel, like or follow the Facebook page, and then for the giveaway post that goes live via a Google form on the 1st of November. That appears on the channel Facebook page at midnight UK time, and then following that you have just over 24 hours to make your entry. The main thing it asks for is a picture of any 40k mini or imagery, along with your name handwritten within the same photo. That bit's just to deter Facebook bots and spammers and make sure prizes go to real people. Then after the 24 hours is up, I do the draw with a random number generator and announce that via a channel update video, usually happening on the 4th of November or thereabouts. Models will be posted after I receive my orders of them. Like I said, I guess the Christmas battle forces will be going up for sale in mid-November. If for any reason Games Workshop decide to make none of one copy of them and that proves popular, I'll still absolutely make sure that people get their miniatures, even if I do have to buy them in individually at great expense. In any case, check out the channel's Patreon page or check back on the Facebook page on the 1st of the month if you wanted to enter for this one. That's about it for this. As mentioned, thank you to Baron of Dice for sponsoring the video. You can check them out and their different faction-specific dice offerings linked down in the video description below. They do have some fun offerings for different armies out there. I'll leave that there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this, and check out the channel's Patreon page if you'd like to enter for those giveaways. There are a few other advantages for Patreons as well, seeing certain videos early and occasional votes as to what comes next on the channel. In any case though, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.